Her husband locked her in the storage room with her feverish son while he went on vacation with his mistress. In the middle of the night, her father-in-law broke down the door and rushed in. "Daughter, something has happened to your husband." "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. Today I lift every woman with a prayer so strong that even the heavens pause to listen. May the Almighty wrap you in a protection no storm can break, honor you with a dignity no hand can touch, and cover your journey with blessings that rise higher than every pain you've ever endured. Women are the backbone of families, the light of generations, the silent heroes who give love even when their hearts are tired. You deserve oceans of respect, mountains of peace, and a future overflowing with joy. I pray your steps be guided, your nights be calm, and your days shine with mercy and miracles. May every burden be lifted from your shoulders, and may every tear turn into a blessing you never expected. You are precious, you are powerful, you are God's masterpiece. If your heart feels this prayer, like the video. If you stand for respect, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Let's start today's story with love. Dwayne Law stood at the storage room door, holding his son's inhaler, and when Jude begged for it through wheezing breaths, Dwayne smiled and said, "Your mother gets this back when she admits what she really is. Insane." 16 hours of darkness had passed. Sophia held Jude's burning body against her chest, his small frame shaking with each labored breath. The pneumonia ravaging his lungs made every inhale sound like drowning. Above them, footsteps crossed the ceiling as Dwayne packed designer luggage for the Maldives. His voice drifted through the floorboards, casual and light. 2 weeks in paradise, babe. She's exactly where she needs to be. Once she signs those papers admitting mental instability, the commitment order becomes legal. Judge rubber stamps it tomorrow. When we return from vacation, she'll be locked in that facility, and the kid becomes ours. Sophia's hands trembled around the unsigned documents Dwayne had shoved under the door. Forms declaring her mentally incompetent, dangerous to her child, unable to function. Sign them, and Dwayne would release the inhaler. Refuse, and watch Jude suffocate while proving a point nobody would hear. The trust fund from Sophia's late father matured in 3 weeks. Massive inheritance Dwayne couldn't access while she remained legally competent. But committed to a psychiatric facility, everything transferred to Jude's guardian. Dwayne would control it all. "Mommy," Jude whispered, lips tinged blue. "Can't breathe." Sophia reached for the pen. The door exploded inward. Raymond Law burst through with a crowbar, his weathered face twisted with rage and shame. "Get up! Hospital! Now!" He scooped Jude into his arms and ran. Sophia stumbled after them, legs cramping from hours of sitting. Dwayne's voice still echoed from upstairs, oblivious to his collapsing world. Raymond's car screamed through red lights toward Memorial Hospital. "Hidden cameras," he said, jaw clenched. "Installed them 6 months ago when things felt wrong. Been recording everything. Tonight, when he took that inhaler and smiled at his dying son, something in me snapped." Emergency room staff swept Jude away immediately. Pneumonia, severe asthma attack, dehydration. Another 2 hours, and they'd be planning a funeral. While doctors worked, Raymond spread documents across waiting room chairs. Divorce papers backdated for tomorrow's filing, forged psychiatric evaluations spanning 2 years, custody papers claiming abuse and neglect, bank statements showing emptied accounts, property transfers, their home already sold to his mistress Camila Rodriguez for pennies. Commitment papers for Brookhaven Psychiatric Facility sat on top, awaiting a judge's signature. 18 months of planning, Raymond said quietly. Not just divorce, complete annihilation. The judge is his college roommate. Everything was arranged. You'd disappear into that facility declared unfit. He'd get custody, all assets, your father's trust fund. Sophia stared at evidence of systematic destruction. "How long have you known?" 6 months of proof, longer of suspicion. "Shame," colored Raymond's voice. "Hired investigators after Thanksgiving. Been copying everything from his office safe. But there's more." Another folder emerged. "Law Industries is failing. He's been embezzling for 4 years. Company carries crushing debt. 6 weeks until bankruptcy unless someone intervenes. He planned to let it collapse, take insurance money, disappear with Camilla to the Cayman Islands. The divorce, commitment, custody battle, all cover for corporate theft and flight. Raymond pulled out an ultrasound photo. His mistress is pregnant. He's promised her everything you own. The house, money, Jude as their son, new family and paradise. Sophia looked at her sleeping child through the ICU window. 8 years ago, before marriage, before Dwayne convinced her to abandon her career, Sofia Vergara had been legendary. She'd transformed 3 dying companies into empires before age 30. Forbes had profiled her as the youngest woman positioned for Fortune leadership. Then Dwayne happened. Charming, persistent, convincing her motherhood mattered more than ambition. He'd spent 8 years isolating her from professional networks, from friends, from her own mother. Criticized her appearance until mirrors became enemies. Questioned her memory until she doubted her own thoughts. Made her small, invisible, controllable. His critical mistake, pushing too far. "How long before he returns?" Sophia asked, voice steel. 13 days. Sophia turned from the window and Raymond saw someone he'd forgotten existed. Not the diminished housewife Dwayne created, the warrior he'd buried. "Then we have 13 days to ensure when Dwayne walks through that door, he won't recognize his life." Sophia's smile could cut glass. "Before your son made the biggest mistake of his existence, I rebuilt empires from ashes. He spent 8 years trying to destroy me. Wrong choice. I'm returning, and I'm taking everything he thinks he owns." Raymond studied his daughter-in-law with dawning respect. "What do you need?" "Everything. Every document, recording, piece of evidence. Then teach me law industries, because I'm not just divorcing your son. I'm taking his company, his money, his reputation, his future. I'm destroying him so completely he'll spend life watching from outside, while I build empires from his failures." The mistress? The baby? Sophia's expression turned predatory. "Let me handle Camilla. By the time Dwayne returns, his perfect new life will be as destroyed as everything else. He wanted to lock me away and forget I existed. Instead, he'll learn what happens when you cage a queen who remembers how to conquer." A doctor emerged. "Mrs. Law, your son is stable. Pneumonia is serious, but we caught it in time. He'll recover fully." Sophia stood, and for the first time in 16 hours, oxygen filled her lungs completely. Jude would live. Dwayne was about to discover the woman he tried to bury was infinitely more dangerous than he'd imagined. Not because she wanted revenge, though she did. Because she remembered exactly who she'd been before he'd made her forget. The woman who turned failing ventures into empires, who'd been offered CEO positions at major firms, who'd been profiled as unstoppable. That woman was back, and she was coming for everything. Chapter 2. The Resurrection. Sofia Vergara stood in Victor Zhang's office and said, "I need everything required to annihilate a man who underestimated his wife." Victor had begged her not to marry Dwayne 9 years ago, warned her, been told to stop interfering. Now he understood why she'd been defensive. Systematic isolation happened gradually, invisibly, until you'd lost everything. Evidence spread across his mahogany desk told stories of psychological warfare that made Victor's blood freeze. Medical reports showed Dwayne had been drugging Sophia's morning coffee with sedatives for 2 years, making her appear unstable at gatherings, confused, forgetful. He'd coached Jude to say mommy leaves stoves on, loses things, gets mixed up, staged incidents, moved keys, rearranged furniture, then claimed she was imagining changes. Classic gaslighting elevated to criminal evidence. "The storage room?" Victor asked. 16 hours. Jude needed his inhaler for pneumonia. Dwayne held it hostage until I signed papers declaring myself insane. Her voice stayed steady. Raymond broke down the door. 2 more hours and we'd have buried our son. Victor leaned back. "Where's Jude now?" "Recovering at Raymond's with medical care, which gives me time to move." She opened her laptop. Law Industries appears valuable, but carries devastating debt from Dwayne's embezzlement and gambling. 6 weeks until bankruptcy without intervention. "You want to own it?" "I want to control it." She displayed files Raymond had copied. Raymond owns minority shares, substantial but insufficient. Dwayne controls larger percentage. 4 board members split the remainder. They hate Dwayne but fear challenging him. Victor saw the strategy immediately. Buy them out. My father left a trust fund that matured yesterday, enough to purchase board shares. Combined with Raymond transferring his holdings, I'll have controlling interest. When Dwayne returns, he'll be minority shareholder in his own company. He'll fight. With what? Sophia's voice could freeze fire. I have embezzlement evidence spanning 4 years, video of him withholding Jude's medication, child endangerment, proof he planned my commitment using forged psychiatric evaluations, bank statements showing theft. He fights, I send him to prison, or he accepts divorce terms and keeps his worthless minority shares. Victor whistled low. You've become ruthless. I became a mother willing to do whatever protects her son from a man who watched him suffocate. Her eyes flashed. Ruthless is generous compared to what he deserves. What do you need? Substantial loans supplementing the trust fund. Best divorce attorney in the country. Someone who destroys cheating husbands professionally. Vanessa Chen. Expensive, brilliant, never lost. Made a senator weep during proceedings. Perfect. Sophia pulled another file. Dwayne's mistress, Camila Rodriguez, is pregnant, believing the baby is his. He's promised her everything I have. House, money, Jude as their son. You're destroying her too? I'm revealing truth. She opened medical records. Camilla is 8 weeks pregnant according to ultrasound dating. Dwayne was in Europe on business 10 weeks ago for 3 weeks straight. Unless he teleports, that baby belongs to someone else. Investigation shows Camilla is actually married, has been for 6 years, to wealthy David Chen in Chicago. Victor's eyebrows rose. Same last name as your divorce attorney. Cousins. Husband knows nothing about the affair or pregnancy, but he will. I'm ensuring Camilla's manipulation of Dwayne gets exposed the same day his life implodes. Cold. Camilla knew about Jude, knew Dwayne was married, helped plan destroying me so they could steal a child. She doesn't get sympathy. She gets consequences. Over 12 days, Sophia moved like controlled demolition. Vanessa Chen reviewed evidence and smiled like a predator. Easiest case of my career. Board members met Sophia individually. She showed embezzlement proof, explained restructuring vision, made offers, sell shares now for fair value, or watch bankruptcy wipe everything. All 4 sold immediately. Raymond transferred significant holdings to Sophia, bringing her to controlling interest. Paperwork was ironclad, reviewed by multiple attorneys, filed before Dwayne could know. Sophia filed for divorce first, attaching all evidence as public exhibits. Within hours, journalists were calling about embezzlement allegations against Law Industries' CEO. Emergency board meeting scheduled for Dwayne's return morning. Final piece required personal touch. Sophia contacted David Chen through his company's anonymous tip line, sent dates, locations, hotel receipts, ultrasound showing his wife pregnant with another man's child. Included Dwayne's contact information. David Chen wasn't forgiving. Day 12, Sophia stood in her new penthouse overlooking the city. Jude was safe at Raymond's. Divorce papers were filed. Law Industries' stock had crashed after embezzlement news broke, making Dwayne's minority shares nearly worthless. Every piece positioned perfectly. Raymond called that evening. He lands tomorrow morning. Flight arrives early. Perfect. Board meeting is afternoon. That gives him time discovering his imploded life before I take the company. Are you sure? Once you destroy him, there's no reversal. He's still Jude's father. Sophia watched city lights below. Dwayne stopped being Jude's father when he held that inhaler and smiled. Tomorrow isn't revenge, it's justice, and maybe eventually, if he does genuine work, becoming someone different, there's a path back. But first, he needs losing everything, needs understanding what he did, needs hitting absolute bottom. Only then can he possibly become who he should have been. And if he doesn't change, then Jude grows up knowing his mother was strong enough protecting him from monsters, even when monsters wore his father's face. Next morning, Sophia dressed in a power suit costing more than most monthly rents. She arrived at Law Industries hours early, sat behind what had been Dwayne's desk, prepared to take what had been Dwayne's company. Her phone buzzed. Vanessa Chen. He landed, tried credit cards, frozen, tried house key, locks changed, heading to office. This will be beautiful. Sophia set her phone down and smiled. Let the reckoning begin. Chapter 3. The Fall. Dwayne Law walked into what he thought was his office and found his wife behind his desk, and when he demanded explanations, Sophia smiled and said, "Taking everything you thought you owned." The elevator opened, revealing Dwayne tanned from 2 Maldives weeks, expensive luggage in hand, designer sunglasses pushed up. Camila Rodriguez stood beside him, hand resting on her barely visible pregnant belly, both laughing about something. Laughter died when they saw the security guard waiting. "Mr. Law, you need checking in with Mrs. Law on the executive floor before proceeding." Dwayne's face shifted from confusion to irritation. "Mrs. Law? Sophia's here? For what?" The guard's expression remained neutral. "You need checking in with her, sir." Camilla squeezed his arm. "What's happening? You said everything was arranged. You said Sophia would be committed, and we'd have everything when you returned." Dwayne's confusion deepened into unease. He pulled out his phone, saw hundreds of missed calls, dozens of voicemails, texts from unknown numbers. His hands shook, scrolling through news alerts. Law Industries CEO accused of embezzlement. Corporate fraud investigation launched. Stock price crashes amid scandal. He pushed past security, jabbed the executive floor button. Camilla followed, excitement shifting to concern. The doors opened into transformed space. Different furniture, new artwork. Even the smell changed. Sophia's perfume replacing his cologne. Behind the massive desk sat Sophia in a power suit radiating authority. Raymond stood beside her like a guardian. 4 board members lined the wall, expressions showing satisfaction. "Hello, darling," Sophia said, honey, sweet and venomous. "Welcome home. We need to discuss your employment status. Congratulations on the baby, Camilla. Hope you liked the gift basket I sent to your apartment." Dwayne's world tilted. "What are you doing in my office?" "Dad, what is she doing here?" Raymond's voice could freeze fire. "It's not your office anymore. Sit and listen." "I will not sit. This is my company. You have no right." "I have every right." Sophia stood, somehow more commanding. "As of 13 days ago, I own controlling interest in Law Industries. Raymond transferred shares. Board members sold theirs. You now own minority shares worth almost nothing because I leaked the embezzlement scandal and stock crashed. So yes, darling, I have every right. This is my company now." She slid 3 folders across the desk, one toward Dwayne, one toward Camilla, one remaining before her. "First folder for you, Dwayne. Divorce papers, I filed 2 weeks ago. Inside, video footage of you withholding Jude's medication while he suffocated. Audio recordings of you planning my commitment using forged psychiatric evaluations, embezzlement proof spanning 4 years, affair proof with Camilla, bank statements showing you emptied shared accounts. Property transfer showing you sold the house to your mistress for nothing. I have sole custody. You'll be lucky getting supervised visitation." Dwayne's face went white, then red, then purple. "You can't do this. Those recordings are illegal." Raymond installed security cameras in his own son's house after suspecting abuse, Sophia said calmly. "Perfectly legal. Recordings authenticated by 3 independent experts. The district attorney reviewed everything, considering criminal charges for child endangerment and fraud." She opened the second folder. "This one for you, Dwayne. As of this morning, you're terminated as CEO of Law Industries for gross misconduct, embezzlement, and mismanagement. Security will escort you from the building. Your minority shares are your only remaining asset, worth almost nothing. Law Industries is currently valued at a fraction of what it should be, thanks to your theft and scandal." Dwayne looked at his father. "Dad, you can't allow this. She's insane, just like I told you. This proves it. Raymond stood, voice shaking with fury. What this proves is you withheld medication from my grandson and watched him almost die. What this proves is you tried having Sophia committed to steal her inheritance. What this proves is you've been stealing from the company I built for 4 years, funding gambling and mistresses. Security isn't escorting you because of Sophia. Security is escorting you because I requested it. Sophia picked up the third folder, walked around the desk, handed it directly to Camilla. And this one for you, sweetheart. See, I've been investigating. Your name isn't Camila Rodriguez, is it? It's Camilla Chen. You've been married 6 years to David Chen, very wealthy man in Chicago. David had no idea you were in a relationship with Dwayne, no idea you were pregnant, until I sent him copies of everything. Camilla's face drained of color. You did what? I sent your husband everything. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos. He should be filing for divorce right about now. Sophia opened the folder, revealing medical records. But here's the interesting part, Camilla. You told Dwayne this baby is his, didn't you? Said you were 8 weeks along, which would make conception around when you and Dwayne were together. It is his baby, Camilla shrieked. Sophia smiled coldly. Except Dwayne was in Europe on business 10 weeks ago, gone for 3 weeks straight. I checked dates very carefully. Unless Dwayne can teleport, he wasn't even in the country when this baby was conceived, which means it's your husband's baby, which means you've been lying to Dwayne about being pregnant with his child to manipulate him into leaving me. Dwayne turned, staring at Camilla, expression shifting from confusion to horror to something else, recognition. You lied, he said slowly. You manipulated me. Used me for money you thought I had. The baby is David's. And you were going to pass it off as mine so I'd support you. Camilla's face twisted. You lied too. You said you were rich. You said once we got rid of your wife, we'd have everything. You said the company was worth millions. You're just as much fraud as I am. Dwayne stared at her, and for the first time since entering this office, something like clarity crossed his face. You're right. We're exactly the same. Both of us used people. Both of us lied and manipulated to get what we wanted. Both of us saw other humans as obstacles or assets instead of people. He turned to Sophia. That's who I was. That's the man standing next to her right now. Someone who'd destroy a child's life for money. Someone who'd use pregnancy as leverage. Someone who'd collaborate to steal someone else's son. He looked back at Camilla with disgust. Get out, not because you lied, because looking at you is like looking in a mirror, and I can't stand what I see. Camilla's face went pale. Dwayne! Did you know? His voice was steel. About the storage room. About me locking Jude there without his inhaler while he suffocated. Her silence was answer enough. Then we're done. You helped me torture a child, and I helped you betray your husband. We're both monsters, Camilla. Difference is I'm trying to stop being one. You should probably start. Camilla fled for the elevator, sobbing. Sophia watched Dwayne carefully. That moment of self-recognition, of seeing his own cruelty reflected in someone else and rejecting it, that was different. That was something the old Dwayne never could have done. Dwayne stood frozen, his entire world collapsing. Dad, please, you have to believe me. I was going to, it wasn't. I never meant for Jude to. You smiled, Raymond said, voice breaking. On the security footage, when Jude begged for his inhaler, you smiled. That's when I knew. My son died somewhere along the way and a monster took his place. Sophia returned to the desk, pulled out one final document. I could file criminal charges right now, Dwayne. Child endangerment, fraud, embezzlement. You'd go to prison for years, but I'm offering you a choice. Sign away all parental rights to Jude, accept whatever I offer in divorce settlement, which will be almost nothing. Keep your minority shares as your only asset, and I won't press charges. You walk away with your freedom and a chance to rebuild your life, or you fight and I destroy you completely. You have 48 hours to decide. Dwayne's voice came out strangled. You can't take my son, you can't. You watched him suffocate. Sophia's control cracked, voice rising. You held his medication and used it as a weapon. You don't get to keep him. You're lucky I'm even giving you the option to stay out of prison. Security appeared at the door. Two large men in uniform stood waiting. "Escort Mr. Law from the building," Raymond said quietly. "Make sure he takes personal belongings and nothing else. If he resists, call the police." Dwayne looked around, at board members who wouldn't meet his eyes, at his father who looked at him with disgust, at his wife who'd just taken everything he thought he owned. "This isn't over, Sophia. You're going to regret this. You're crazy. Everyone will see you're crazy, just like I told them." Sophia's voice was ice. "That's what you wanted everyone believing, wasn't it? That I was mentally unstable, incompetent, needed locking away. But here's what actually happened, Dwayne. You tried caging a queen. Bad decision. Now everyone gets to watch what happens when the queen breaks free." Security took his arms, led him toward the elevator. His protests and threats echoed through halls as they dragged him from the building that had been his birthright and identity. Raymond walked to the windows, stared out at the city. He'll break. Completely. Everything he built his identity around is gone. "That's what happens when you build identity on cruelty and theft," Sophia said quietly. "What if he doesn't sign? What if he fights? Then I send him to prison and he loses Jude anyway. Either way, he loses. The only choice he has is whether he keeps his freedom." That night, hospital called. Dwayne brought in for panic attack. He was coming apart. Jude asked Sophia, "Mummy, is Daddy ever coming home?" Sophia realized destroying Dwayne meant Jude loses his father. She had power to crush him completely, but what would that cost her son? Chapter 4. The Choice. Dwayne Law signed divorce papers that would end his life as he knew it, and when his lawyer asked if he'd fight, Dwayne laughed bitterly and said, "Fight with what? She took everything, including my will, to pretend I'm innocent." The apartment sat in a neighborhood Dwayne had driven through countless times without seeing. Cheap construction, thin walls, neighbors shouting at all hours, thrift store furniture because bank accounts were frozen pending divorce settlement, one bedroom, one bathroom, kitchen where the refrigerator hummed like dying. Rock bottom. Dwayne signed papers on the second day. No choice. His lawyer laid it out brutally. Fight and go to prison for child endangerment minimum. Possibly fraud and embezzlement. Sign and walk away with minority shares that might become valuable if Sophia saved the company. Not really a choice at all. Camilla was gone. Returned to Chicago and her wealthy husband, who apparently forgave her affair for their unborn child's sake. Dwayne saw the announcement in society pages. David and Camilla Chen announce expecting their first child. No mention of Dwayne. No mention that Camilla had spent months manipulating him into destroying his marriage for a future built on lies. Dwayne's friends disappeared. Phone calls went unreturned. Invitations stopped. The embezzlement scandal had covered business news, and nobody wanted association with a disgraced former CEO who'd stolen from his own company. Job search was humiliating. Every interview ended identically. The interviewer would Google Dwayne's name, see scandal articles, suddenly remember they had another preferred candidate. 3 months searching before finally finding work at a mid-level consulting firm, making a fraction of former salary. The position was beneath his experience and education, but beggars couldn't be choosers. Co-workers treated him with polite distance. They'd all seen the news. They all knew who he was and what he'd done. Every morning, Dwayne drove past the mansion he'd lost, the company he'd destroyed, the life he'd burned. Every morning was fresh reminder of how completely Sophia had defeated him. But the worst part wasn't money or house or company. The worst part was Jude. Sophia had full custody with supervised visitation at Raymond's estate. Once weekly, Dwayne was allowed seeing his son for 2 hours, while Raymond watched from distance. First visit, Jude had run to him, then stopped, uncertain. "Daddy?" Dwayne dropped to his knees, pulled Jude into his arms, and for the first time since the storage room, actually felt the weight of what he'd done. Not theoretically, not abstractly, but in his bones, in his soul. The crushing reality of how badly he'd hurt this perfect little boy who loved him despite everything. "I'm sorry," Dwayne whispered into Jude's hair. Daddy is so sorry, buddy. Why did you lock us in the dark room, Daddy? Why did you take my inhaler when I couldn't breathe? No good answer. No excuse that wouldn't sound monstrous. So Dwayne told truth. Because Daddy was sick in his head, Jude. Because Daddy was more worried about money and himself than about you and Mommy. Because Daddy made terrible choices and hurt the people he should have been protecting. And Daddy is so sorry. You deserved a better father than what I was. Can you be better now? That question haunted Dwayne for 3 months. Could he be better? Or was he fundamentally broken in ways that couldn't be fixed? Dwayne started therapy because court mandated it for visitation rights. First session, therapist looked at him with professional neutrality and asked what brought him in. I watched my son suffocate and smiled about it, Dwayne said. What kind of person does that? The therapist didn't answer, just waited. In that silence, something inside Dwayne cracked open. He talked for an hour about growing up as Raymond's son with impossible expectations, about never feeling like enough, about marrying Sophia when she was this brilliant, successful woman and feeling intimidated by her achievements, about slowly, systematically cutting her down to make himself feel bigger, about gambling that started as entertainment and became addiction, about embezzling to cover debts, about mistresses who made him feel powerful and desired, about the moment he realized everything was collapsing, and instead of facing it, he blamed Sophia, convinced himself she was the problem, drugged her coffee to make her seem unstable, coached Jude to doubt her, staged incidents to make her look incompetent. And the storage room? The therapist asked. I thought if I could break her completely, force her to admit she was crazy, then commitment papers would stick. Then I could have her locked away, take everything she owned, marry Camilla, and nobody would question it. Everyone would believe Sophia had simply lost her mind, and it was tragic but necessary. Dwayne stared at his hands. I held that inhaler and watched Jude's lips turn blue, and all I could think about was getting Sophia to sign those papers. My son was dying and I was thinking about paperwork. Do you understand why that was wrong? I understand it was evil. I understand it was monstrous. What I don't understand is how I became the kind of person capable of it. Therapist wrote something in notes. I think you should consider inpatient treatment, intensive therapy, psychiatric evaluation. What you did wasn't just criminal. It suggests deep psychological issues needing significant professional intervention. Dwayne went to his father after that session. Raymond was at the estate with Jude, and when Dwayne arrived for scheduled visitation, he asked Raymond to stay. The therapist thinks I need inpatient treatment, he said. Months of it, intensive. Raymond studied his son. What do you think? I think he's right. I think something inside me is fundamentally broken, and it's been broken for a long time. Maybe always, and I don't know how to fix it, but I know I can't keep being this person, because this person held his son's inhaler and smiled. This person tried to lock his wife in an asylum to steal her money. This person destroyed everything he touched. Dwayne's voice broke. I don't want to be this person anymore, Dad, but I don't know how to be anyone else. Raymond was quiet for a long time. Then, there's a facility upstate. Very expensive, very intensive. They specialize in personality disorders and addiction. If you're serious about getting help, I'll pay for it. Why would you do that? After everything? Because you're still my son. Because even though what you did was unforgivable, I have to believe people can change or there's no point to anything. And because Jude deserves a father who's tried everything possible to become worthy of him. Raymond paused. But I need to be clear. This doesn't erase what you did. You don't get forgiveness just because you go to therapy. You have to do the work, real, painful work, for months, maybe years. And even then, Sophia may never take you back. Jude may never fully trust you again. You might do everything right and still lose them forever. Can you live with that? Dwayne thought about Jude asking, can you be better now? He thought about Sophia sitting behind what had been his desk, transformed into someone powerful and untouchable. He thought about the man he'd been and the monster he'd become. I don't know if I can live with that, Dwayne admitted, but I know I can't live with who I am right now. So yeah, I'll go. I'll do whatever it takes, not because I think I deserve a second chance, but because Jude deserves to know his father tried. Raymond nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements. Sophia heard about the inpatient treatment from Raymond during one of their weekly meetings about Law Industries. The company was being restructured, debt was being paid down, new contracts were being signed. Under Sophia's leadership, Law Industries was becoming what it should have always been. He's going to a facility upstate, Raymond said. Intensive therapy, months of it. Good, Sophia said without looking up from the contract she was reviewing. Maybe they can fix whatever's broken in him. Do you hate him? Sophia set down her pen and looked at Raymond. No, hate requires energy, and I don't have energy to waste on Dwayne right now. I'm too busy saving this company and raising Jude and building a life that doesn't include room for the man who tried destroying me. Does Dwayne deserve a chance to get better? Yes, because Jude deserves a father who's tried. Does that mean I have to participate in his redemption? No. That's his journey, and he has to walk it alone. What if he does change? What if he comes out of treatment genuinely different? Sophia thought about it for a long moment. Then I'll decide whether different is enough. But that's a decision for future me to make. Present me as focused on making sure if Dwayne never changes, it doesn't matter. Jude will still have a good life. I will still have success and security. The empire I'm building doesn't require Dwayne's participation. That's very rational. Rationality is all I have left. Dwayne took everything else, including my ability to trust my own emotions when it comes to him. So I'm trusting logic instead. And logic says, protect Jude, build the company, move forward. Everything else is secondary. But that night, alone in her penthouse, Sophia allowed herself to feel what she couldn't feel during the day. She missed the man she'd thought Dwayne was when they first married. The charming, attentive man who'd made her feel special and loved. She mourned the family they could have been if Dwayne had been different, better, genuine. But she didn't miss Dwayne himself, the real Dwayne, the one who'd systematically destroyed her confidence, isolated her from friends, gaslit her into questioning her own sanity, and ultimately watched their son suffocate because paperwork mattered more than life. That Dwayne didn't deserve to be missed. Jude was the complication in all of it. He asked about Daddy every day, cried sometimes at night for the father he remembered from before everything fell apart. Sophia did her best to explain in ways a 7-year-old could understand. Daddy made very bad choices that hurt people, Sophia told Jude one night when he was crying. When grown-ups make bad choices, there are consequences. Daddy is learning about consequences right now. But that doesn't mean Daddy doesn't love you. Sometimes love isn't enough when people hurt each other too badly. Can love be enough again later? Maybe, baby. Maybe if Daddy works really, really hard to become better. But it takes a very long time, and I can't promise it will happen. What I can promise is that no matter what happens with Daddy, you will always be loved and safe. Mommy will make sure of it. Are you sad, Mommy? Sophia wiped away tears she didn't realize were falling. Yes, baby. Mommy is sad. Sad about what happened, sad about what Daddy did, sad about how everything fell apart. But you know what else Mommy is? Mommy is strong, and Mommy is going to keep being strong until the sad parts get smaller. Can I be strong too? Sophia pulled Jude close. You already are, sweet boy. You already are. 3 months after the storage room, Sophia stood on the roof of Law Industries headquarters, looking out at the city she was conquering. The company was thriving. Stock price was recovering. Business publications were calling her a genius and a phoenix rising from ashes. Somewhere upstate, Dwayne was in a therapy session, probably crying about the life he'd lost and the son he'd hurt. Sophia hoped he'd changed. For Jude's sake, she genuinely hoped Dwayne did the work and became someone worthy of being a father. But she wasn't waiting for it, wasn't planning her life around the possibility. She was building an empire that would stand whether Dwayne ever came back or not. And if he did come back changed, if he somehow managed to transform into someone genuine and good, well, Future Sophia would decide what to do with that. Present Sophia had a company to run. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. Sofia Vergara sat across from her son's school counselor, looking at a drawing of a boy torn in half, and when the counselor asked what she planned to do, Sofia finally admitted, "Maybe being right isn't the same as making things better." The drawing was devastating in its simplicity. Jude had used crayons to draw himself, a small figure in the center of the page. On one side, a woman labeled Mommy, reaching for him. On the other side, a man labeled Daddy, reaching for him. And right through the middle of Jude's crayon body, a jagged line splitting him into two pieces. Mrs. Patterson, Jude's counselor at the prestigious private school Sophia had enrolled him in after everything fell apart, set the drawing on her desk, where both women could see it clearly. "Jude drew this during art therapy yesterday," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "When I asked him to explain it, he said he feels like he's being pulled apart. That loving his mother means he can't love his father, and loving his father means betraying his mother. He's 7 years old, Mrs. Law, and he's experiencing trauma response typically seen in much older children." Sophia stared at the drawing, throat tight. "Jude's been seeing a therapist twice weekly since the incident. The therapist said he was making progress. He is making progress on the primary trauma, being locked in the storage room, the fear of his father, the medical neglect. But now there's secondary trauma emerging. Jude loves you both. He understands intellectually that his father did terrible things, but emotionally, he's still a child who wants his daddy. And he's watching you be successful and powerful and amazing, which makes him proud, but he's also seeing his father destroyed and absent, which makes him sad. He doesn't know how to reconcile those two realities. What am I supposed to do? Pretend what Dwayne did was acceptable? Minimize it for Jude's comfort? No, absolutely not. What happened was serious, and the consequences are appropriate." Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. "But I think Jude needs to hear from you that loving his father doesn't betray you. That it's possible to hold someone accountable and still hope they become better. Because right now Jude thinks he has to choose between you, and that choice is destroying him." Sophia looked at the drawing again. The jagged line through Jude's body, the two pieces being pulled in opposite directions. This was what revenge looked like when a child was caught in the middle. "There's something else we need to discuss," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Jude has been acting out at school, fighting with other children. Yesterday he punched another boy in the nose because that boy said something about Jude's father being a criminal. Last week, Jude threw his lunch tray at a teacher who asked him to talk about his family. He's withdrawn during class time, refuses to participate in group activities, and his grades have dropped significantly. His therapist didn't mention any of this, because it's not happening at therapy. It's happening in environments where Jude doesn't feel safe being vulnerable, at school, at home when you're working late, at his grandfather's estate during visitation with his father. Jude is holding himself together during therapy sessions and falling apart everywhere else." Sophia felt like the ground was crumbling beneath her. She'd been so focused on saving Law Industries, on building security for Jude's future, on proving she was strong enough to survive what Dwayne had done. She'd missed the fact that Jude was drowning right in front of her. "What do I need to do?" Mrs. Patterson pulled out a folder of additional drawings. All of them showed variations of the same theme. A family broken into pieces, Mommy in one place, Daddy in another, Jude alone in the middle. "He needs family therapy, all three of you together. He needs to see you and Dwayne in the same room being civil to each other. He needs permission from both of you to love you both without feeling guilty. And Mrs. Law, I know this is hard to hear, but Jude needs more of your time. You've been working extremely long hours building the company. I understand why. You're providing security, proving yourself, protecting your son's future. But what Jude needs right now isn't financial security. He needs his mother present." Sophia wanted to argue, wanted to explain that everything she was doing was for Jude, that Law Industries' success meant Jude would never be vulnerable to someone like Dwayne, that building an empire meant building protection, but the drawings on the desk told a different story. "I'll fix this," Sophia said quietly. Whatever needs to happen, I'll fix it. That night, Sophia did the hardest thing she'd done since the storage room. She called Dwayne at the treatment facility. He answered on the third ring. Sophia? His voice sounded different, smaller, stripped of the arrogance that had defined him. We need to talk about Jude, Sophia said, not bothering with pleasantries. His school counselor says he's struggling, acting out, falling apart. He drew pictures of himself being torn in half between us. Silence on the other end. Then, is he okay? No, Dwayne, he's not okay. He's 7 years old and traumatized, and we're both so busy dealing with our own issues that we're missing the fact that he's drowning. What can I do? You have full custody. I only get supervised visitation once a week. I'm stuck in this facility for another 2 months minimum. The counselor suggested family therapy. All 3 of us, together, learning how to be civil for Jude's sake. Dwayne's voice cracked. You're willing to be in the same room as me? After everything? I'm not willing, but I'm Jude's mother, and he needs this. So yes, I will sit in a room with the man who tried to destroy me if it helps our son stop drawing pictures of himself torn in half. When? Once a week, starting next week. Raymond will set it up at his estate so there's neutral territory. And Dwayne? If you use this as an opportunity to manipulate or play victim or do anything except focus on helping Jude, I will end it immediately and you'll never see him again. Understood? Understood. And Sophia, thank you. I know I don't deserve. Don't, Sophia cut him off. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about what Jude needs. That's the only reason this is happening. Sophia hung up and stood at her penthouse windows, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Law Industries was thriving under her leadership. Stock prices were climbing, contracts were being signed. The business world was watching Sofia Vergara and marveling at her comeback. But in a prestigious private school, a 7-year-old boy was punching classmates and throwing lunch trays because his world had been shattered, and no amount of corporate success could fix that. The first family therapy session was brutal. The therapist, Dr. Reynolds, was a specialist in childhood trauma and family systems. She had kind eyes, but a firm demeanor that made it clear she wouldn't tolerate dysfunction. Jude sat between Sophia and Dwayne on a couch, small and tense. Sophia sat on the far end, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. Dwayne sat on the other end, looking like he'd aged years in months. He was thinner, paler, his expensive suits replaced with simple clothes. Most striking was his posture, hunched, defeated, nothing like the arrogant man who'd locked them in that storage room. Thank you all for coming, Dr. Reynolds said. Jude, do you know why we're here today? Jude shook his head, not making eye contact with anyone. We're here because your mommy and daddy want to help you feel better. They know you've been sad and angry, and they want to understand how to make things easier for you. Does that sound okay? Jude shrugged. Can you tell us about the pictures you drew at school? The ones where you're in the middle being pulled apart. Jude's lip quivered. I don't want to talk about it. That's okay. How about I tell them and you can nod if I get it right? Dr. Reynolds waited for Jude's slight nod. Jude feels like he has to choose between loving his mommy and loving his daddy. He thinks if he loves his mommy, that means he can't love his daddy because of the bad things daddy did. And he thinks if he loves his daddy, that means he's betraying his mommy who got hurt. So Jude feels stuck in the middle being torn in two. Is that right? Jude nodded, tears streaming down his face. Sophia's heart shattered. She reached for Jude's hand, and after a moment, Dwayne did the same from the other side. Jude sat there holding both his parents' hands, crying silently. Jude, Sophia said softly, look at Mommy. She waited until Jude's tear-filled eyes met hers. You don't have to choose. You can love us both. What Daddy did was very wrong, and there are consequences for that. But you loving Daddy doesn't hurt Mommy. Do you understand? Jude shook his head. But you hate Daddy. I can see it. Mommy is very angry at Daddy for what he did. But that's between grown-ups. You're allowed to love Daddy even though Mommy is angry at him. Those are two different things. Jude turned to Dwayne. Are you mad that I love Mommy? Dwayne's voice broke. No, buddy. Mommy is amazing. She's strong and smart, and she protected you when Daddy was being terrible. You should love Mommy. And Daddy is so proud of you for being strong too. Then why can't we be a family again? Jude's question was so simple, so heartbreaking. Dr. Reynolds stepped in gently. Because sometimes when grown-ups hurt each other very badly, they can't live together anymore. That doesn't mean they stop being your parents. It doesn't mean they don't both love you. It just means the family looks different than it used to. Can it look the same again if Daddy gets better? That was the question, wasn't it? Sophia looked at Dwayne across their son's head. She saw the man who'd held Jude's inhaler and smiled, but she also saw a broken person who was at least trying to become someone different. Maybe, Sophia said carefully, but that would take a very long time and a lot of work from Daddy to prove he's changed. And even then, Mommy might decide it's not possible. What's important right now is that you don't worry about that, Jude. Your job is to be 7 years old and focus on school and friends and being a kid. Let the grown-ups worry about the grown-up problems. The session continued for another hour. Dr. Reynolds gave them homework, daily check-ins with Jude, family dinners once a week at Raymond's estate where they'd all be civil, and commitments from both Sophia and Dwayne to never badmouth each other in front of Jude. Driving home, Sophia realized something that made her uncomfortable. She'd been so focused on her own pain and trauma that she'd missed Jude's. She'd been working endless hours to build security, but what Jude needed was presence. She'd been proving she was strong enough to survive without Dwayne, but Jude needed to know it was okay that he still wanted his father. Sophia hired a COO the next week, someone brilliant and capable who could handle day-to-day operations of Law Industries, while Sophia focused more time on Jude. She cut her work hours from 80 hours weekly to 50, leaving her afternoons and evenings free. She started showing up at Jude's school for lunch. She attended every soccer practice. She sat with him while he did homework instead of reviewing contracts in her home office. She read bedtime stories instead of sending him to sleep so she could work. And slowly, Jude started healing. The family therapy sessions continued weekly. They were painful and difficult, but gradually Jude stopped drawing pictures of himself torn in half. His fighting at school decreased. His grades improved. One night, 3 months after that first therapy session, Jude climbed into Sophia's lap at bedtime and said, "Thank you for letting me love Daddy, even though he hurt you." Sophia held her son close. "You get to love whoever you love, baby. Nobody can tell you that's wrong." "Do you think Daddy is getting better?" Sophia thought about the therapy sessions, about Dwayne showing up consistently, doing the work, never making excuses, about how he'd apologized to Jude without trying to minimize what he'd done, about how he supported Sophia's decisions even when they were clearly painful for him. "I think Daddy is trying," she said honestly. "Whether that's enough remains to be seen." That night, after Jude was asleep, Sophia stood in her home office looking at photos from before everything fell apart. Her wedding day, Jude's birth, family vacations, all the moments that had felt real at the time but turned out to be built on lies and manipulation. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost didn't open it, but something made her look. It was from Elias Moretti, a billionaire tech investor who'd reached out months ago about partnering with Law Industries. Sophia had declined the meeting, too focused on restructuring the company to take on new partnerships. The text read, "I've been following Law Industries' recovery. Impressive work. Would you like to discuss investment opportunities and perhaps dinner? Not business. Just dinner." Sophia stared at the text. This was what moving forward looked like. A successful, attractive man expressing interest, a future without Dwayne. But when she looked at the text, all she felt was tired. She responded, "Rain check? I'm focused on my son right now." His reply came immediately, "Whenever you're ready, I'll wait." Sophia set the phone down and returned to the photos. She wasn't ready to move forward into something new, but she also wasn't sure if she was holding space for Dwayne to come back or just wasn't ready to let go of the past. Either way, the decision didn't need to be made tonight. Tonight, she just needed to be Jude's mother. Everything else could wait. Chapter 6. The Transformation. Dwayne Law stood in Raymond's estate living room watching his son play in the yard, and when Raymond asked if he'd really changed, Dwayne said quietly, "Ask her in 6 months, and if she says yes, then maybe it's real." The intensive treatment facility had stripped Dwayne down to his foundation and forced him to examine every broken piece. 5 months of daily therapy, group sessions, psychiatric evaluation, and brutal self-reflection. The diagnosis had been complicated: narcissistic personality traits, gambling addiction, generalized anxiety disorder, and depression that had gone untreated for years. The psychiatrist had been blunt. "You built your entire identity around being better than everyone else, smarter, more successful, more powerful. When your wife was more brilliant than you, instead of celebrating her, you systematically destroyed her to protect your fragile ego. That's not love, Mr. Law. That's abuse, born from deep insecurity." Dwayne had wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself, but the video footage of the storage room played on a loop in his mind. That smile, the way he'd held the inhaler just out of Jude's reach, the casual cruelty, that was him. That was who he'd become. The treatment had been excruciating, facing exactly who he was without the armor of arrogance or the comfort of lies, accepting that he'd been a monster wearing a husband's face, understanding that everything he'd lost, Sophia, Jude, the company, his reputation, he'd destroyed with his own hands. Now he was out, living in that tiny apartment, working the mid-level job, attending therapy twice weekly, and showing up for supervised visitation hoping to prove he'd changed. The visitations had increased to twice weekly, still supervised by Raymond, but longer now. 4 hours instead of 2, time for Dwayne to actually be a father instead of just a visitor. "Daddy, watch this!" Jude called from the yard, then did a cartwheel that was more enthusiasm than technique. Dwayne applauded, his throat tight with emotion. This perfect child who still loved him despite everything, who still called him daddy, who still wanted him present. "You're different," Raymond observed from where he stood beside Dwayne at the window. "Not just saying the right things, actually different." "Therapy will do that when you actually commit to it," Dwayne said. "Turns out when you stop lying to yourself, you start seeing how badly you've been lying to everyone else." Sophia noticed too. At the therapy sessions, you're not making excuses anymore, not playing victim, not trying to minimize what you did. Because there's no excuse, there's no minimizing watching your child suffocate and smiling about it. That happened, I did that, and no amount of explanation makes it acceptable. Dwayne's voice was steady, factual. "The only thing I can do now is make sure the person who did that doesn't exist anymore, build someone different from the ground up. Do you think Sophia will ever forgive you?" Dwayne watched Jude laugh and chase a butterfly. "No, and she shouldn't. What I did was unforgivable, but maybe if I work hard enough, long enough, genuinely enough, maybe she'll decide that while she can't forgive the past, she can give the present a chance. Maybe she'll believe the person standing in front of her is different enough from the monster who hurt her that second chances become possible. But that decision is hers, not mine. My job is just to become someone worthy of that decision, whether it comes or not." The family therapy sessions had become less tense over the months. Dr. Reynolds had them practicing communication techniques, learning how to discuss Jude's needs without attacking each other, finding ways to co-parent despite their history. At the most recent session, something had shifted. They were discussing Jude's upcoming birthday party when Sophia said, "Jude wants you there, not just at Raymond's estate after, at the actual party." Dr. Reynolds looked at Sophia. "How do you feel about that?" "Uncomfortable, afraid it will be awkward, worried about what people will think." Sophia paused. "But it's not about my comfort, it's about what Jude needs, and he needs his father there." Dwayne had sat frozen, barely breathing. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." That conversation had been 2 weeks ago. Now the party was approaching, and Dwayne was terrified. All of Sophia's family would be there, her friends, people who knew what he'd done, and he'd be standing there, the villain at the celebration, trying to be normal for his son's sake. The week before the party, Dwayne did something he'd been working up the courage to do for months. He wrote Sophia a letter, not an apology letter demanding forgiveness. Not a love letter trying to manipulate her emotions, just an honest accounting of what he'd learned in treatment and what he was doing differently. He left it on her desk at Law Industries during his lunch break from work. His security badge still didn't work. Raymond had to escort him up. The office that had been his was Sophia's now, and seeing her nameplate on the door was another reminder of everything he'd destroyed. He didn't expect a response, didn't even know if Sophia would read it. But 3 days later, his phone rang. "Sophia, I received your letter," she said without preamble. "Tell me something. All the things you wrote about understanding how you tried to make me small, about recognizing the systematic abuse, about accepting full responsibility. Is that real? Or is that just what your therapist told you to say?" "It's real, painfully real. I spent 5 months in that facility being forced to watch video footage of myself over the years. Not just the storage room, all of it. The way I talked to you, the casual put-downs, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of your confidence, watching myself be a monster while thinking I was a good husband. That kind of reality check isn't something you fake. The letter mentioned you're working at a consulting firm now. How's that going?" "Humbling. I work for people half my age who are twice as smart. I make a fraction of what I used to make. Live in an apartment that's smaller than our old walk-in closet. And honestly, it's exactly what I deserve, maybe even generous considering what I did." "Do you resent it? The reduced circumstances?" "No. How could I resent consequences I earned? Resentment comes when you think you don't deserve what's happening. But this is justice. Maybe even mercy, considering you could have had me arrested." There was a long pause. Then, "What do you want, Dwayne, from all of this? What's the goal?" "To be a good father to Jude. That's it. That's the only goal that matters. If you never forgive me, if you move on with someone else, if I spend the rest of my life alone in that apartment working a job beneath my education, all of that is fine if it means Jude grows up knowing his father did everything possible to become worthy of being called Dad. And if I told you there might be a path back? Not now, not soon, but eventually." Dwayne's breath caught. "Then I would keep doing exactly what I'm doing. Therapy, honesty, showing up for Jude, working hard, being humble. Not because it's a strategy to win you back, but because it's who I need to be regardless. If that eventually means second chances become possible, that's a gift I don't deserve. If it doesn't, I'm still becoming someone better. Jude asked me yesterday if you'd ever live with us again. What did you tell him?" "The truth, that it would take years of you proving you've changed. That even then I might decide it's not possible, but that it's not his job to worry about grown-up problems." Sophia's voice softened slightly. "But you should know, I'm watching. Every therapy session, every visitation, every choice you make. I'm watching to see if this change is real or just another manipulation." "What's the verdict so far?" "Undecided. Ask me in another 6 months." Jude's 8th birthday party arrived with sunshine and chaos. Sophia had rented space at a venue with activities for kids and areas for adults. There were balloons and a massive cake and what seemed like hundreds of children running everywhere. Dwayne arrived exactly on time, carrying a gift he'd made himself. During treatment, he'd learned woodworking as part of occupational therapy. He'd spent 2 months building Jude a toy chest, carving his name into the wood, sanding it until it was smooth as glass. Inside the chest, he'd placed a letter for Jude to read when he was older. A letter explaining what Daddy had done, why it was wrong, and how hard Daddy had worked to become better. Not excuses, just truth. Walking into that party felt like walking into a firing squad. Everyone knew who Dwayne was and what he'd done. Conversations stopped when he entered. Eyes followed him. Judgment was thick in the air. Sophia's mother, Diana, approached him immediately. "If you hurt my grandson again, they won't find your body." "Understood, ma'am." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded curtly and walked away. Raymond rescued him, pulling him aside. "You okay?" "No, but that's appropriate. These people love Sophia and Jude. They should hate me for what I did. I'd hate me too if our positions were reversed." Jude saw him and ran over, launching himself into Dwayne's arms. "Daddy, you came!" "Of course, buddy. Wouldn't miss your birthday for anything. Did you bring a present?" Dwayne showed him the toy chest, and Jude's eyes went wide. "You made this? For me?" "Built it myself. It's got your name on it and everything. A special place to keep all your favorite things." Jude traced his name carved in the wood. "This is the best present ever, Daddy." Dwayne's throat was too tight to speak. He just hugged his son and tried not to cry in front of all these people who were still watching with suspicion and hostility. Sophia approached carefully. She looked beautiful in a casual dress, her hair pulled back, smiling at something another parent had said. When she saw Dwayne with Jude, something flickered across her face too fast to interpret. "Nice gift," she said neutrally. "Thanks. Learned woodworking at the facility." "They teach that in treatment?" "Occupational therapy. Helps with focus and building something with your hands. Metaphor for rebuilding yourself, probably." Dwayne set Jude down so he could run back to his friends. "Thank you for letting me be here." "It's for Jude." "I know, still. Thank you." They stood there awkwardly while chaos swirled around them. Children screaming with joy, parents chatting, music playing, the normal life of a child's birthday party. "You look good," Sophia said suddenly. "Healthier than before." "Sober living and therapy will do that. Lost weight, sleeping better. Turns out when you stop lying to everyone, including yourself, stress levels drop significantly." "Are you happy? In that tiny apartment, working that job, living that life?" Dwayne considered the question honestly. "No, but I'm content in ways I never was when I had everything. There's peace in accepting you deserve exactly what you got. No resentment, no bitterness, just acknowledgement that this is earned consequence. And someday maybe the work will lead to something better. But if it doesn't, that's okay too." Sophia was quiet for a moment then. "The woman you tried to destroy, she would have been impressed by that answer. The woman you actually destroyed, she's still deciding if she believes it." "That's fair." Sophia walked away to attend to other guests, leaving Dwayne alone again. But it felt different than isolation. It felt like progress. Like maybe, slowly, trust was being rebuilt one conversation at a time. The party continued for hours. Dwayne stayed in the background, not trying to insert himself into Sophia's world, just being present for Jude when Jude wanted him, helping clean up, being useful without demanding acknowledgement. As guests were leaving, Raymond pulled Dwayne aside. "You did good today. Didn't push, didn't demand attention, just showed up and supported Jude. That's the only job that matters." Sophia noticed. "She was watching you all day." And she didn't look angry. For the first time since this started, she looked at you and didn't look angry. "That's progress, son. Don't waste it." Driving home to his tiny apartment, Dwayne thought about progress, about the slow rebuilding of trust, about the long road between being a monster and being a man worthy of second chances. He was 6 months into that road, maybe years left to travel, but for the first time since the storage room, he had hope that the destination might be achievable. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but maybe, eventually, a chance to be part of his son's life in meaningful ways. And if Sophia ever decided that chance could extend to her, that would be a gift Dwayne would spend the rest of his life proving he deserved. Chapter 7. The Test. Sofia Vergara made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her, and when Raymond asked if she'd lost her mind, Sophia said firmly, "No, but it's time to see if Dwayne has found his." Law Industries was thriving. 10 months after Sophia had taken control, the company had not only recovered, but was exceeding all previous performance records. Debt was paid down. New contracts were flowing in. The stock price had climbed steadily. Business publications were running feature stories about Sophia's transformation from housewife to corporate powerhouse. But the most shocking headline came when Sophia called a board meeting and made an announcement nobody expected. "I'm hiring a new entry-level analyst," she said to the 4 board members and Raymond. "Starting salary is modest. He'll report to the COO. No special privileges or considerations. He'll be evaluated purely on performance like any other employee." The board members looked confused until Sophia added, "The new hire is Dwayne Law." The room exploded. "You can't be serious." One board member stood. "He embezzled from this company. And he'll be working here under my leadership to earn back what he stole through labor instead of sitting in prison," Sophia said calmly. "I've calculated that if Dwayne works entry level for the next several years at current salary, the value of his labor will approximately equal what he stole. Call it restitution through service." "But why?" Raymond asked quietly. "Why bring him here where you have to see him every day?" "Because I need to see if his change is real or just performance for therapy sessions and visitation. I need to see if Dwayne can handle me being his boss, if his ego can survive working at the company he used to run while I sit in the executive suite, if he can support my decisions even when they negatively impact him. This is the test, Raymond. If Dwayne passes, then maybe, second chances become possible. If he fails, at least I'll know I tried everything." The vote was contentious, but Sophia's controlling interest meant her decision stood. Dwayne started the following Monday. His first day was brutal. He showed up wearing clothes from discount stores, all he could afford on his current salary and savings for child support. He was given a cubicle in the analytics department surrounded by people half his age who'd all seen the news about what he'd done. His supervisor was a woman named Jessica Chen, 26 years old, brilliant with data analysis, and not impressed by former CEOs who destroyed their own companies. "Your job is to run reports," Jessica said bluntly. "Input data, verify calculations. It's tedious work that requires attention to detail. Can you handle that, or is it beneath someone who used to sit in the executive suite?" "Just tell me what needs to be done," Dwayne said quietly. "And one more thing, I don't care who you used to be. In this department, you're entry level. That means you get the work nobody else wants. Late hours, weekend coverage, clean-up tasks. You have a problem with that, take it up with Mrs. Law." "No problem." Jessica studied him suspiciously, clearly expecting pushback or resentment. When none came, she shrugged and handed him a stack of files. "Start with these. Due by end of day." The work was mind-numbing. Data entry and verification that required no analytical thinking, just careful attention to details. The kind of work Dwayne would have delegated without thought when he was CEO. Now, it was his entire job. He didn't complain. Just sat in his cubicle and did the work. 3 weeks in, the real test came. Jessica had been working on a major report for the executive team about quarterly projections. The data was complex, requiring analysis across multiple departments. She'd been working 16-hour days, trying to meet an aggressive deadline Sophia had set. At 10 p.m. on a Thursday, Jessica made a critical error in her calculations. She didn't realize it until the next morning when she was preparing to present the report to Sophia and the board. The deadline was noon. The error would take hours to fix. There was no time. She was going to fail, publicly, in front of the CEO and the entire board. Dwayne had been working late on his own tedious assignments when he heard Jessica's frustrated sob from her office. He found her with her head in her hands, the report scattered across her desk. "What's wrong?" "None of your business." "Maybe. But you look like your world is ending, and I'm not great at much these days. But I used to be decent with data analysis. If you need help..." Jessica looked up, eyes red from tears of frustration. "Why would you help me? I've been nothing but harsh to you since you started." "Because you're stressed. The work needs to be done, and I have nothing better to do at 10 p.m. on a Thursday than help a colleague who needs it." "I don't even like you." "That's fair. So what's the problem?" She explained the error, and Dwayne immediately saw the issue. "Let me look at the raw data. This is fixable. They worked together until 4 a.m. Dwayne's experience as former CEO meant he understood the analytical framework Jessica needed. His years of reviewing reports meant he could spot errors quickly. By dawn, they had the report corrected and verified. Jessica stared at him with exhausted gratitude. "Why did you do this? I've treated you terribly since you started." "Because it's not about you liking me. It's about the work being done right. And because Sophia built this company into something extraordinary, and she doesn't deserve a faulty report messing that up. Even if the person who fixes it is the same person who nearly destroyed the company in the first place." At noon, Jessica presented the corrected report. It was flawless. Sophia nodded approval, and the board commended Jessica's work. Jessica didn't mention Dwayne's help, didn't tell anyone he'd saved her, just took the credit and moved on. Later that afternoon, she came to Dwayne's cubicle. "Thank you. You didn't have to help me, and you definitely didn't have to let me take the credit." "Why?" "Because I wasn't helping for recognition. I was helping because it was the right thing to do." "You're really different than I expected." "Good. That's the point." Word spread through the department slowly over the following weeks. Dwayne was always willing to help, never took credit, worked late without complaint, handled tedious assignments without resentment, supported Sophia's decisions even when they created more work for him. The younger employees who'd initially treated him with hostility began to warm slightly. Not friendship exactly, but respect for someone willing to do the work without ego. 2 months into Dwayne working at Law Industries, Sophia called him to her office. He arrived nervous, unsure if this was about his work or something else. Sophia sat behind her desk, looking every inch the powerful CEO she'd become. "Sit." He sat. "I've been watching you," Sophia said without preamble. "Watching how you handle working here, how you interact with colleagues, how you respond when Jessica gives you the worst assignments, how you stayed until 4 a.m. helping to fix that report." "You knew about that?" "Jessica told me, eventually, after feeling guilty about taking credit for work you helped with." Sophia leaned back. "You could have demanded recognition, could have told people you saved her, could have used it to make yourself look good. You didn't. Why?" "Because it wasn't about me looking good, it was about the work being done right." Sophia studied him for a long moment. "You've been here 2 months. In that time you haven't complained once, haven't resented my authority, haven't tried to undermine my decisions, haven't used the position to manipulate or scheme. You've just worked, shown up, been helpful. Why?" Dwayne met her eyes. "Because this is who I need to be. Not strategy, not performance. Just someone who does the work, supports the company, and understands that my job is to prove through consistent action that I'm different. If that means working in a cubicle, reporting to people half my age while you sit in the executive suite, then that's what it means. You deserve to lead this company. You're better at it than I ever was. My ego doesn't get a vote in that reality. And if you're stuck in that cubicle for years, if this is as far as you ever get, if I never promote you, never give you more responsibility, never acknowledge your contribution, then I stay in that cubicle and keep doing the work. Because it's not about advancement or recognition. It's about proving that I can be someone who supports instead of destroys, someone who builds instead of tears down, someone who submits to your leadership without resentment because your leadership is exactly what Law Industries needs." Sophia was quiet for so long that Dwayne started to worry. Then she said something that shocked him. "Custody is being increased. Starting next week, you can have Jude overnight twice a week, unsupervised." Dwayne's breath caught. "Unsupervised? Are you sure?" "No, but I've been watching you for 10 months. Therapy sessions where you never made excuses. Visitations where you supported my decisions even when they hurt you. That birthday party where you stayed in the background instead of demanding attention. And now 2 months of working here under my leadership without complaint. If you were still the man who held that inhaler, you'd have cracked by now. You'd have resented my authority. You'd have schemed or manipulated or demanded recognition. You haven't, so either you're the greatest actor in history or you've actually changed. I'm choosing to believe it's the latter." "Thank you," Dwayne whispered. "You don't know what this means." It means nothing if you blow it. The first time Jude comes home upset because you badmouthed me. The first time you use unsupervised time to undermine my authority. The first time you treat this as opportunity instead of responsibility. It ends. Understood? Understood. Good. Now get back to work. Jessica has a new report that needs data verification, and you're the person she requested for the job. Dwayne stood, turned to leave, then paused. Sophia. Yes? Law Industries is lucky to have you as CEO. The company has never been stronger. You're extraordinary at this. Always were. I was an idiot for trying to bury that instead of celebrating it. You're right, you were. Now prove you're not that idiot anymore. That night, Dwayne sat in his tiny apartment and thought about progress, about the long road from monster to man, about the slow rebuilding of trust through consistent action instead of empty promises. He was 10 months into the journey, years left to travel, but he'd just been given unsupervised time with his son. That was trust. Small, tentative, revocable trust, but trust nonetheless. And Dwayne was going to prove every single day that it wasn't misplaced, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, through showing up, through doing the work, through being the father Jude deserved and the man Sophia needed to see if second chances were ever going to be possible. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of consistency at a time. Until maybe, someday, the man in the mirror was someone worth trusting, someone Jude could be proud to call dad, someone Sophia might eventually decide deserved a second chance. That was the work. That was the goal. And Dwayne was finally ready to do it right. Chapter 8. The Breaking. Sophia Vergara was in an emergency board meeting when her phone lit up with a call from Jessica Chen, and 30 minutes later she stood in a hospital emergency room realizing that watching someone break from guilt was different from watching them suffer from a distance. The board meeting had been intense. Law Industries was finalizing a major international expansion. Sophia was presenting quarterly projections when her phone rang. She almost ignored it, but the caller ID showed Jessica from Analytics. Mrs. Law, it's an emergency. Dwayne collapsed. 20 minutes earlier, Dwayne had been sitting in his cubicle running routine data verification. The office was buzzing with news that Sophia had just secured the biggest contract in company history. People were celebrating, congratulating each other, talking excitedly about bonuses and promotions. Someone walked past his cubicle and said to a colleague, "Can you believe how far this company has come? 18 months ago we were bankrupt because of that criminal CEO. Now we're international. Sophia Law is a genius." Dwayne had stared at his computer screen. Criminal CEO. That was him. The company he'd nearly destroyed was now thriving without him, because of him being removed. His chest had tightened. Then Jessica appeared at his cubicle. "Hey, Dwayne, the team wants to celebrate Sophia's big win at happy hour tonight. You should come. Everyone's been saying how much they respect your work ethic." The team respects him. They don't know. They don't know about the storage room. His vision started tunneling. "I watched my son turn blue," he'd whispered, not meaning to say it out loud. "What?" "Jude." His lips turned blue. I held his inhaler, and I smiled. Dwayne's hands were shaking. "Everyone here respects me, but they don't know. They don't know what I did. They don't know I'm a monster." "Dwayne, you're hyperventilating. I need you to breathe." "I can't breathe." Jude couldn't breathe, and I smiled, and now... The words weren't making sense. The room was spinning. Building a better person on a rotten foundation. What if it collapses? What if I collapse? What if the monster comes back? His heart was racing so fast. Too fast. Something was wrong. He couldn't breathe. Just like Jude. Just like... Then everything went black. Jessica had called emergency services immediately. Now Sophia stood in the emergency room as Dr. Morrison explained, "Severe panic attack. Third one in 2 months according to his records. The previous 2 he managed at home. This one was bad enough that he lost consciousness." They kept Dwayne overnight. Sophia sent Jude home with Raymond, but something made her stay. When she walked into his hospital room, Dwayne was awake, staring at the ceiling. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly. Sophia pulled a chair to his bedside. "What triggered it today? Does it matter?" "Yes." Dwayne was quiet for a long time. "Someone called me a criminal CEO. It's true, but hearing it out loud while people were celebrating your success, celebrating how far the company has come without me." He looked at her. "Then Jessica invited me to happy hour, said the team respects my work, and I just broke. Because they don't know. They respect someone who doesn't deserve respect. They're kind to a monster. And what if that's all this is? What if I'm just performing being better, but the monster is still there waiting?" Sophia studied him. The genuine fear in his eyes, the trembling in his hands, the way he couldn't even look at himself without disgust. "That's not how monsters think," she said quietly. "Monsters don't worry, they're monsters. They justify, they excuse, they blame everyone else. The fact that you're terrified of being who you were, that's proof you're not him anymore." Dwayne's eyes filled with tears. "Jude asked me yesterday if I'd ever live with you again." "What did you tell him?" "That it would take years of me proving I've changed. That even then, you might decide it's not possible. That his job is to be 8 years old and not worry about grown-up problems." Dwayne looked at Sophia. "But then he asked if I wanted to live with you again, and you should know, yes, more than anything, not because I want my old life back. That life was built on abuse and lies and I deserve to have lost it, but because I want a chance to build a new life, one where I'm your partner instead of your tormentor, where I celebrate your success instead of resenting it, where I'm a real father to Jude instead of someone who uses him as leverage. But that's my dream, not my expectation. If you decide I never get that chance, I'll understand. And I'll still keep doing the work, because becoming someone better is its own reward, even if forgiveness never comes." Sophia sat with that for a long moment. "I'm not ready to answer that question, not today, maybe not for years, but I'm not saying no, I'm saying not yet. And Dwayne, that should be enough for now." "It is. More than enough." A nurse came in to check vitals and Sophia stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "The panic attacks. Talk to your therapist about them. Get the medication adjusted if necessary. And Dwayne, stop punishing yourself for being human while you're trying to become better. You're allowed to struggle with guilt. You're allowed to have panic attacks processing the trauma you caused. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you someone genuinely confronting what you did instead of running from it. There's integrity in that, even when it's painful." She left before he could respond. In her car, Sophia sat gripping the steering wheel and trying to understand her own emotions. Seeing Dwayne broken and vulnerable had cracked something in her armor. Not forgiveness, not even close, but recognition that the person suffering in that hospital bed was genuinely trying to become someone different. The question was whether Sophia could ever trust that difference enough to risk her heart and Jude's safety again. She didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time since the storage room, she was willing to admit the answer might eventually be yes. If Dwayne kept doing the work, if the consistency held, if years passed without backsliding or manipulation or resentment, then maybe, someday, they could have a conversation about second chances, but not today. Today, Sophia just needed to process the fact that seeing her ex-husband broken by guilt made her feel something other than satisfaction. Something complicated and uncomfortable that might have been the beginning of forgiveness, or might just have been exhaustion. Time would tell. Chapter 9. The Choice Law Industries hosted its annual gala celebrating record-breaking success. And when Dwayne bought a ticket with his modest salary just to watch Sophia shine, she finally understood what real love looked like after destruction. The gala was the event of the season. Law Industries had gone from near bankruptcy to international powerhouse in just under 18 months. Sophia was being honored as CEO of the Year by multiple business organizations. Everyone who mattered in the industry would be there. Sophia wore a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, midnight blue silk that made her look like royalty. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She was the picture of success and power. She didn't expect Dwayne to be there. He was entry-level staff. Nobody at his position typically attended the gala. Tickets were expensive and junior employees weren't expected to spend their limited resources on company events. But halfway through the evening, Sophia saw him. He was in the back of the ballroom, wearing an old suit that was slightly too big now that he'd lost weight. His ticket had cost him probably a week's pay. He wasn't networking or trying to be seen, just sitting alone at a table in the corner watching Sophia. When she took the stage to accept her award, Sophia gave a speech about transformation and rebuilding, about how sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you're truly capable of building. 18 months ago, Law Industries was failing, Sophia said to the crowd of hundreds. Debt was overwhelming. Leadership was corrupt. The future looked bleak. Some people said the company should just fold, take the insurance money and walk away. But I looked at this company and saw potential, saw what it could become with proper leadership and vision. So I took control, not because it was easy, because it was necessary. The crowd applauded. Sophia continued. But rebuilding Law Industries wasn't just about business decisions. It was about believing that things broken can be fixed if you're willing to do the hard work. About understanding that sometimes the greatest success comes from the deepest failure. About having faith that transformation is possible when you stop making excuses and start taking responsibility. As Sophia spoke, she found Dwayne in the crowd. He was crying, silently, just sitting in that corner in his too big suit, tears streaming down his face, watching her with pure pride and no trace of resentment or jealousy. So this award, this recognition of Law Industries' success, isn't just about me, she said, her voice catching slightly. It's about everyone who believed that rebuilding was possible, who put in the work even when it was hard, who showed up consistently even when recognition seemed impossible, who chose to become better instead of staying broken. The applause was thunderous. Sophia accepted her award and made her way through the crowd of people wanting to congratulate her. Business leaders, investors, competitors who respected what she'd built. But her eyes kept finding Dwayne in that corner, alone, not trying to approach her or insert himself into her success, just being present to witness it. Later in the evening, when the speeches were done and the dancing had started, Sophia found herself standing on the balcony, needing air. The celebration was overwhelming. Everyone wanted a piece of her. Advice, partnership opportunities, congratulations. She was standing there looking out at the city when she heard footsteps behind her. Dwayne. Sorry, he said immediately. I didn't mean to interrupt. You looked like you needed space. You came to the gala. That ticket costs a significant portion of your paycheck. Worth it. I wanted to see you shine. You were incredible up there. Sophia turned to face him fully. Why are you really here, Dwayne? And don't say just to watch. You could have watched from home when the video gets posted online. Dwayne leaned against the balcony railing, keeping a respectful distance between them. Because seeing you succeed in person, in real time, surrounded by people who recognize your brilliance, that's different than watching a video. And because I needed to sit in that ballroom and feel what it's like to be in the same space as you while you're being celebrated, to watch you command respect from hundreds of people, to see you be everything I tried to destroy, that's important. For me to witness, to really understand what I almost took from the world. That sounds like punishment, like self-flagellation. Maybe, or maybe it's gratitude. Gratitude that you stopped me before I succeeded in destroying something extraordinary. Gratitude that you didn't let me make you small permanently. Gratitude that Law Industries exists in this form because you refused to let my failures define what was possible. They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the party muted through the glass doors. Your speech, Dwayne said quietly. When you talked about rebuilding and transformation and believing broken things can be fixed, were you just talking about the company? Sophia considered lying, considered maintaining the walls she'd built so carefully over 18 months. Instead, she chose honesty. No, not just the company. Dwayne's breath caught. So you think people can be rebuilt too? Not just businesses. I think some people can be rebuilt if they're willing to do the brutal work required, if they're willing to face what they were without excuses, if they're consistent not for weeks or months, but for years, if they prove through action, not words, that transformation is real. And do you think I'm one of those people, or am I still under evaluation? Sophia turned to look at him fully, really look at him, the weight he'd lost. The exhaustion around his eyes from working hard and sleeping little, the way he held himself with humility instead of arrogance, the genuine emotion on his face when she'd accepted her award. I think you're getting there. I think the man standing on this balcony is genuinely different from the monster who held that inhaler. But here's what you need to understand, Dwayne. Different isn't the same as trustworthy. You can be a better person and still be someone I can't risk my heart or Jude's safety with. The question isn't just whether you've changed, it's whether you've changed enough that the risk becomes acceptable. And what would make the risk acceptable? Time. Consistency over years, not months. Proof that when life gets hard again, because it will, you don't revert to old patterns. Proof that your ego can handle me being more successful than you permanently. Proof that you can celebrate my victories instead of feeling diminished by them. Proof that Jude's needs always come before your wants. Proof that you understand partnership means equality, not dominance. Dwayne nodded slowly. That's fair. All of that is completely fair. There's something else, Sophia said. Someone else. Dwayne's face went carefully neutral. Someone else. Elias Moretti, tech investor, brilliant, kind, successful. He's been pursuing me for months. Respectful pursuit, no pressure, just consistent interest in building something with me. Someone who never hurt me. Someone who celebrates my success without baggage. Someone safe. Do you have feelings for him? I don't know. I've been so focused on Jude and the company and watching you to see if this change is real that I haven't let myself feel much of anything for anyone. But Elias represents something appealing, a future without history, without trauma, without having to constantly evaluate whether trust is warranted. He's easy in ways you can never be, Dwayne, because with you there will always be the storage room, always the knowledge of what you're capable of when things go wrong. Dwayne was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Then why haven't you moved forward with him? If he's everything I'm not, safe, easy, without baggage, why are you still watching me, still testing me, still leaving the door open even slightly? Because I don't know if safe is what I actually want. Safe would be smart, safe would be protecting myself, but maybe, and this is what scares me, maybe there's value in watching someone do the hard work of transformation. Maybe there's something powerful in witnessing genuine redemption instead of just choosing easy grace. And maybe, despite everything, there's history between us that matters. Not good history, but history nonetheless. Shared DNA in Jude. Years of life intertwined. That doesn't disappear just because I choose someone new. So what happens now? Now I go back to that party and continue being CEO of the year. Now you go back to your apartment and your entry-level job and your therapy sessions. Now time passes. More months, probably years. And eventually, I'll make a decision. Either the risk of trusting you becomes acceptable, or I move forward with someone like Elias who never gave me reasons to doubt. But that decision isn't happening tonight. Can I ask you something? Not about us. About Jude. Of course. He asked me last week if you were dating anyone, if Mommy was going to have a new husband. He seemed worried. Like maybe if you married someone else, there'd be no room for his dad anymore. Could you talk to him? Make sure he understands that whatever happens between the grown-ups, he'll always have his father in his life. Sophia's expression softened. I already did. Jude and I talked about it last night. I told him that my choices about dating don't affect his relationship with you, that he'll always have both parents who love him, whether together or apart. He seemed reassured. Thank you for that. for everything you've done to help him feel secure despite me destroying our family." They stood together on the balcony for a few more minutes, the weight of 18 months and a lifetime of choices hanging between them. Finally, Sophia said, "You should go. People will start wondering why the CEO is having private conversations with entry-level staff." "Right. Of course." Dwayne turned to leave, then paused. "Sophia, you really were incredible tonight. The speech, the award, everything. The business world is lucky to have you. Jude is lucky to have you. And I was lucky to have you once. Even though I destroyed it, even though I don't deserve a second chance at that luck, I'm grateful it existed at all." After he left, Sophia stood alone on the balcony for a long time. She thought about Elias, who'd sent flowers earlier that day with a note saying he was proud of her success, who represented safety and ease and a future without pain. She thought about Dwayne, who'd spent a week's salary to sit in the back of a ballroom just to watch her shine, who was doing the brutal work of transformation with no guarantee it would lead anywhere. She thought about Jude, who deserved parents who modeled either healthy partnership or healthy boundaries, not confusion and uncertainty. And she thought about herself, about what she actually wanted versus what she thought she should want. The answer wasn't clear yet, but standing on that balcony, accepting that she still felt something when she looked at Dwayne, that was progress. Or maybe it was regression. Time would tell. For now, she just needed to get through the rest of this party without making any decisions she'd regret. Tomorrow, she'd go back to being CEO, back to raising Jude, back to watching Dwayne prove himself or fail. And eventually, she'd figure out whether the man who tried to destroy her could ever become the man who deserved her. But not tonight. Tonight, she just needed to celebrate what she'd built from the ashes of what he'd burned. And that was enough. Chapter 10. The Empire of Second Chances. 16 months after the storage room, Sofia Vergara asked Dwayne Law to meet her at the house they once shared, and when he walked through the door, she said the words that would change everything. "I want to try again, but on completely different terms than before." The house looked different. Sophia had bought it back from Camilla months ago and spent significant time renovating. Every room had been transformed, lighter colors, different furniture, new energy. It was their house, but reborn. The storage room in the basement had been converted into a playroom for Jude, filled with light and laughter instead of darkness and trauma. Dwayne stood in the living room where everything had fallen apart, looking at Sophia like he couldn't quite believe she'd asked him here. "Why did you want to meet here?" he asked carefully. "This house has terrible memories." "Which is exactly why I chose it. Because if we're going to have this conversation, it needs to happen in the place where everything went wrong, where you were your worst, where I was most vulnerable. Because what comes next, if anything comes next, needs to be built on honest acknowledgement of what happened, not pretending it didn't." Dwayne sat when Sophia gestured to the couch. She remained standing, maintaining the power dynamic that had defined their relationship for 18 months. 16 months ago, you locked me and Jude in a storage room," she began. "You withheld medication from your dying son. You tried to have me committed to steal my inheritance. You embezzled from your company. You systematically destroyed my confidence over years of marriage. You were, by every definition, a monster." Dwayne nodded, not arguing. "Yes, but in 16 months I've watched you do something I didn't think was possible. You went to intensive treatment. You've been in therapy twice weekly for over a year. You accepted consequences without fighting. You worked an entry-level job while I ran the company you destroyed, and you never complained. You supported my success even when it clearly hurt your ego. You showed up for Jude consistently, never bad-mouthing me, always taking responsibility. You spent a week's salary just to watch me receive an award. You've been humble, honest, and consistent for 16 months. "So what does that mean?" Dwayne asked quietly. "It means I have a choice to make. I can choose safety, someone like Elias who never hurt me, someone easy and kind and uncomplicated, Or I can choose risk, giving you a chance to prove that transformation is permanent, that the person sitting in front of me now won't become the monster again when life gets difficult. What did you choose? Sophia sat down across from him, maintaining distance but engaging directly. I'm choosing risk. I'm choosing to give you a chance. But you need to understand, this won't be what it was before, not even close. Dwayne's eyes filled with tears. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. Dating, real dating, for at least 6 months minimum before we even discuss living together. Couples therapy once weekly. Individual therapy continues. Family therapy with Jude continues. All non-negotiable, forever. Agreed. I remain CEO of Law Industries. That doesn't change, ever. You can advance based on merit, but you'll never be my equal in the business hierarchy. Your ego has to permanently accept that. It already does. Joint custody, but I retain final decision-making authority on major issues regarding Jude. Education, medical care, we discuss it, but if we disagree, my decision stands. Understood. Prenuptial agreement if we ever marry again. What's mine stays mine, what's yours stays yours. Clean separation if this doesn't work, no fighting over assets. Of course. Most important, the first time you lie, manipulate, try to make me feel small, resent my success, badmouth me to Jude, or show any sign of reverting to who you were, this ends, immediately, permanently, no second chances, one strike and you're out forever. Can you live with that? Yes, because those terms are fair, more than fair. They're what someone like me deserves after what I did. Then let's try. 6 months later, they were having dinner at Raymond's estate when Jude asked, "Are you and Daddy getting married again?" Sophia looked at Dwayne across the table. 6 months of real dating, 6 months of continued therapy, 6 months of him proving himself daily. No backsliding, no resentment, no manipulation. Maybe someday, Sophia said carefully, if Daddy keeps doing the work and I keep believing the transformation is permanent. 1 year after that conversation in the renovated house, Dwayne asked Sophia to marry him again. Not with an expensive ring or grand gesture, just a simple question. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice, trusting me? She said yes. Their wedding was small, just family and close friends. When Dwayne said his vows, he promised to celebrate your strength daily, to support your success always, to be the partner you deserve, to be the father Jude needs, to be the man worthy of the second chance you gave me. Sophia promised to keep trusting as long as you keep proving trust is warranted, to keep building this partnership, to keep believing in the man standing here instead of the monster from the past. 2 years after they remarried, Sophia stood in their renovated home's kitchen making coffee. Through the window, she could see Dwayne in the backyard teaching Jude how to build a wooden birdhouse, the same woodworking skills he'd learned in treatment. Jude was laughing at something Dwayne said. Dwayne ruffled his hair, handed him the sandpaper, showed him how to smooth the edges. Patient, present, real. Law Industries was now worth hundreds of millions. Dwayne worked as VP of Development, a position he'd earned through years of merit, not marriage. They'd just returned from a family vacation where nobody had fought, nobody had manipulated, nobody had made anyone feel small. It was so ordinary, it was extraordinary. Sophia's phone buzzed. A message from Elias Moretti, who'd remained a friend. Saw the Forbes article. Congratulations on the international expansion. You've built something remarkable. She smiled and typed back, "We built something remarkable. Thank you for your friendship." Dwayne came inside, Jude running ahead to wash his hands. He walked up behind Sophia, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Sophia looked out at the backyard where Jude was now examining the half-finished birdhouse. "That 2 years ago, I wasn't sure if I'd made the right choice. Wasn't sure if trust would ever feel automatic instead of evaluated." "And now?" She turned in his arms to face him, searched his eyes for any trace of the man who'd held that inhaler, found only the man who'd spent years earning his way back. Now I'm sure. Dwayne's eyes filled with tears. He opened his mouth to speak, probably to thank her, to promise he'd keep proving himself, to say all the things he'd said hundreds of times before. Sophia put her finger to his lips. Show me. Not with words. Just keep showing me, every single day, the way you have been. He nodded, kissed her forehead, went to help Jude finish the birdhouse. Sophia watched them through the window, father and son working together, both of them safe, both of them loved, both of them whole. She picked up her coffee and walked to the basement door, the door that had once led to a storage room filled with darkness and terror. Now it led to Jude's playroom, painted bright yellow, filled with toys and books and laughter. She opened it. Sunlight streamed up from below. She could hear Jude's favorite music playing on the speaker down there, could see his art projects taped to the walls, could smell the fresh paint from when they'd redecorated last month. The storage room was gone. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but transformed into something beautiful, just like them. Sophia closed the door and walked back to the kitchen window. Dwayne and Jude were attaching the roof to the birdhouse now, both of them concentrating intensely. "Daddy, what kind of birds will live in this?" Jude asked. "Any bird that needs a home, buddy. Any bird that needs a second chance." Jude looked up at his father. "Like you, Daddy. You got a second chance." Dwayne's voice was thick with emotion. "Yeah, buddy, like me. And I'm going to spend every day making sure that chance wasn't wasted." Sophia smiled and turned away from the window. She had a company to run, an empire to build, a life to live. A life that included the man who'd tried to destroy her, who'd lost everything, who'd spent years becoming someone worthy of being let back in, not because she'd forgotten what he did, because she'd chosen to believe that transformation earned through brutal work was more powerful than revenge. That was the empire that mattered most, not the company worth hundreds of millions. The family they'd rebuilt from ashes, one difficult choice at a time. The end. Closing. Sofia Vergara built a business empire worth hundreds of millions, became CEO of the year, and proved that true strength isn't just survival, it's the courage to give second chances to people who do genuine, brutal work to deserve them. Dwayne Law lost everything, spent years proving through consistent action that transformation is real, and became the man he should have been all along. Their family rebuilt isn't a fairy tale. It's a testament to accountability, therapy, boundaries, and the hardest truth, that people who hurt you can sometimes, not always, become people who love you better than anyone else could. That's not romance. That's redemption, earned through years of genuine work. That's the empire that matters most.